Thurston County, Mission Year 2023. My crew and I have been assembled to investigate the important nonprofit sector, to find the untold stories and distribute the video to you, to provide the information that will build a stronger community.
Support for Mission Nonprofit is provided by Thurston Talk.
This program is provided in the public interest by Thurston Community Media. More information at TCMedia.org. Hello, I'm Robert Kim, your host for Mission Nonprofit. Each month, we take a look at a local nonprofit organization making an impact in our community. This month, we have the Brenrose Foundation. Welcome, Executive Director Tammy Lavario. Thanks for being here, Tammy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, the Brenrose Foundation is brand new. You just started. What is it that you do for the community here?
Well, I have a large home on the east side of Olympia that I rent to young adults who are aging out of foster care or homelessness. I live on site as support and kind of the manager of the home. And I just help them get connected to services, help them with life skills, help them with conflict resolution, and just learning how to live in community in the home. I like to call it a soft place to land is what I try to provide for them, so they can just rest for a little while and not feel so much pressure from the outside world. These are young people that have had a lot of trauma in their life, both before they came into the system and then obviously in the system as well. So they often just need time to just rest and be nurtured and have some time to get their feet under them before they make a plan for the future.
Right.
So after they're there for a little while, we start talking about what they want to do and what they want to be and what are their next steps. What do they need now? Do they need to finish high school? Do they want to go to college? Do, a trade school? But we do it in a very natural way, not a clinical, not an institutional way, so that they can just feel like people who have a friend that's helping them figure out life.
That's interesting that you say graduate. Do they need to graduate high school still? And because the state would just cut them off at that age, like at 18, right? And
well, they do have the option to sign themselves back in and stay until age 21.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
Then that's extended foster care. I have 3 young people right now in my home, actually 4, who are in extended foster care. They're over 18, but they're still technically under the guardianship of the state. So they can, the state pays them just a small stipend to just help them with their living expenses. Not enough really to live on, but enough to supplement. And the state has to check the place out, make sure that it's suitable, and they have to be engaged in school or a job in order to qualify.
Okay. Now, you have a lot of experience in this field because it's what your job has been for
a long time.
A long time.
Yeah, yes.
And so, tell us a little bit about your background working with foster youth.
Right. Well, I started working with children and families around 35 years ago, all ages, and my volunteer work was with inner city kids. And then when I moved to Washington in 2008, I moved into a home. I was hired to move into a home as the live-in caregiver. It was my only residence. So I was there 24 hours a day with little time off, and I cared for 5 adolescent girls. As their caregiver. I was basically a single mom of 5. We had some people would consider it group care, but we ran a foster care model, so it felt like a home to them. Yeah.
And they're from various different backgrounds, but their parents lost custody of them to the state.
Right.
So, I mean, that's hard enough as it is, but just different stories behind each one of them.
Yeah, they had just a wide array of issues they were dealing with, everything from addiction to self-harm. There was some trafficking. Many had a lot of anger. Some were in the juvenile justice system. And there was a wide array of reasons why the parents lost their kids as well. Some of them probably didn't need to. Some of them probably could have, if they had received the services they needed with the kids, they could have kept their kids in the home. I know the state is working on changing that a little bit and putting more resources into family homes rather than just pulling kids out. But most of the cases were situations where the kids absolutely needed to be safe and they were not.
Right.
The families were unable to keep them safe.
Yeah.
So that's who we got. A lot of them also were failed adoptions. I mean, I don't really like that term, but it's what it was. A lot of people think that all the unwanted babies just get adopted. Actually, they don't. Many of them end up in some pretty difficult situations, and some of those who do, many of those adoptions don't succeed. When you're dealing with young people with trauma, people aren't quite prepared for what can come up. And sometimes it doesn't come up until they hit puberty, when the hormones kick in, and then the rage really flows, and the normal teen acting out is amplified by the trauma that these kids experienced. And so oftentimes people just aren't prepared for that, especially if they have their own children in the home.
Right. I could see
So
that.
if things get really, really difficult, and they kick them back. And so by the time the kids came to my home, trust had just been broken so many times. They had very little trust in anyone.
You've got to rebuild that trust. And
yes, they had been through, 10 to 20 placements in their lives by the time they came to me. And because of the model that we had, of this family-based model, most of the time, they would come and stay. And come and stay long term, and many would age out.
And then, but what happens when they aged out? They have to just kind of find a job or find a home, or
yeah, hopefully, Well, the goal was to help build skills in them so that they were able to connect to those things when they left. Unfortunately, though, for kids with trauma, they're often not operating at their chronological age, and so they're 18 years old, but actually they're not 18 years old, and the world expects them to do all these things that they're not even prepared to do. But they're sick of being in the system, they're sick of being told what to do, they're sick of this being under this microscope, so they fly out. I had several who at 18, even though they liked me, they didn't want to be under rules, they didn't want to be told what to do anymore, and they would take off and then come back a few months later and be like, can I come back? It's terrible. Freedom wasn't as free as they thought it was.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's, in all those years, I got to see how much they struggled when they leave care, and all the systems that are in place. There's great agencies that are just doing everything they can trying to address this issue, but it's so large, it's so big, and agencies have grown so large that it's very difficult for them to. But many fall through the cracks because. There's a standardized way of being that both in the state and with these large agencies, and it's not as individualized as I personally think it should be, which is why I want to stay on the small side. I don't want to become some giant agency with a big building, and I want to stay on the ground. I'm going to be networking with another local nonprofit who does homeless outreach. And together we hope to just streamline kids off the street into homes that we both then manage and help support. So the houses don't get trashed, and so that the kids, or young people, I call them kids, but the young adults can heal from their trauma and get stabilized, move into the front of their brain instead of, operating out in fight or flight in survival mode, so that they can start to make the decisions that will help improve their life. Because that's the other thing too, is that, when they're in survival mode, they cannot even access the parts of their brain that they need to make the decisions that everyone expects them to be able to make. They need a safe place to be for a while,
They need to be able to trust you or whoever else is their authority figure at the time.
Yep. Yes, they do. They do. And I also am a firm believer in giving them their own rooms. In so many services that are offered, and I get it. I get why, because there's so many that need to be served. We want to, pile them up and get as many in as we can. But I don't think that in the long run that actually stabilizes. There's a lack of felt safety when you're sharing a room with someone. It's hard to sleep.
It's not just anyone, it's other youth that have experienced trauma and,
Right, yeah, and they never know. Going to sleep in your own room where you can lock the door and there's no one in there, so you can fully, rest, because you know that nothing's going to happen to you in your sleep. When you leave and you lock your door, no one's going to steal your stuff. So I'm a firm, I will stick to that. They have the option. They have the option of having a roommate if it's a really good fit.
Okay.
But I'm not going to make them do that.
Okay.
I also prefer to use homes rather than apartments, because it creates this capsule of sorts that kind of protects them from the world.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
They're not having to deal with the things that come from a lot of people living in one building, which for many people is fine, but for kids with trauma who need to stabilize, I think it's better for them to be in a place that they don't have to deal with a whole lot of people.
Yeah. And so you have one house now, right? And how many rooms do you have? How many can you accommodate?
I have 5 rooms. It's a really large 3-story home with 5 rooms and 3 bathrooms, which is fabulous. They don't have to. They don't have to fight over bathrooms. And I hope to. So I have some fundraising coming up in July. I have a farm to table and silent auction dinner. That I'm hoping to get bank enough to move on to another home. And it's at that point that I'll be working with another outreach, and that will be kids coming off the street.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yep. We just want to take them right off the street and get them in there.
And this is just youth. You're not taking adults off the street.
No.
Do you draw the line at a certain age?
Yeah, for that it would be like 18 to 26. Yeah, 18 to 26, I think. Depends. It depends, it'll be individualized. We'll do interviews and we will assess them for their readiness to come and be a part of a community in a home. Because that's work. Getting even adults who live in communal homes struggle with getting along and everyone doing their part, and which is why they need someone there. They need help to navigate those things so that it stays peaceful, so that it stays safe, and so that their beefs, as they call them, don't turn into assaults. Right? And my goal, and when I am funded, is to hire my former foster youth, the youth I lived with in the girls' home who are now grown, will be trained as peer counselors. And I have 3 right now who are ready to go, ready for me to hire them as soon as the money's there. And I will have them do the hands-on work in the homes with the youth. And I'll manage the nonprofit, I'll work on the marketing, I'll work on expanding, and just making sure that everyone gets the support that they need. But I want those youngsters with all the fresh energy and they're, navigating the.
And they can probably relate to these people. They're close to their age, so yeah, it sounds like a good
and
thing.
they understand. Yeah, they understand the escalations. They understand the isolation. They understand all of it. And so even with some training, they'll be fantastic because it is difficult when someone's exploding in your face, even if you were one of those people who used to explode in faces. It's still difficult when it happens to you. So they'll need a little bit of training, but ultimately they'll be fantastic.
And where are they now? You said they finished the foster system. Are they living on their own? Or
I have, my first peer support hire will be a young lady who was with me from age 13 until she aged out. She was in and out of the home. She was a tough one, but she's just doing fantastic. She has her own apartment. She has a car, and she's been working at the homeless shelter downtown for 2 years. Okay. So yeah, she's got that, but she really, really wants to work with me. And then I have 2 others that are nearby. One has her own photography business, and the other one is taking a little break from work, he says. I wish that I could hire them.
So we have a short video with some interviews of these youth that were your former foster kids. And let's take a look at this video, and we'll come back and talk more.
Okay.
My name is Bryce. I go by he, him pronouns. I have not started transitioning yet, so that's why I look like this. I have ADHD and autism, so I often forget to do things.
Right.
I often get sidetracked.
So you need a lot of support to help keep you on track, right?
Yeah.
You do.
I really do.
You know, you have a really great vocabulary that I've noticed over the years, and you definitely...
Except I don't tend to use it. I'm more, what's the word?
You don't have a lot of a filter, so just...
I don't have much of a filter at all.
Which can be pretty funny, right?
Sometimes.
And
then sometimes it's just horrifying.
So you also got to move in with a foster sister that you lived with in another home, Miss Emily.
Yep.
Yeah.
I send her weird stuff. She sends me weird stuff. She sent me a picture of her foot once. That was weird.
That's hilarious.
Well, for starters, my name is Destiny. I'm 23. I work at a homeless shelter called Interface Works. Been there for almost 3 years.
So you see a lot of the issues with people who are on the street.
Way too much. I just continue to see like all these people, not just teenagers, but like all these people with addiction who OD, and all we do is call the EMTs, and they're offered help, but they can refuse it. And then I see it all the time. They just go on about their day like they didn't just die right there and got brought back. Like, I've seen it with old foster sisters, family, friends. I've lost friends. Like, the cycle doesn't end unless there's like really some true love, support, and care for these people who struggle so hard. I'm rooting for this program to start because I was one of the lucky ones, and a lot of people that have gone through this same journey or something alike, they haven't been so lucky. So if this was able to happen, just to imagine how many young adults, young kids would just be able to live a whole different journey, a whole different life than where they're at right now, what track they're on right now.
Welcome back to Mission Nonprofit. If you're just joining us, our guest this month is the Brenrose Foundation, and Tammy Lavario is here with me to talk about them, and you are the executive director. Yes. The Brenrose Foundation mentors youth who have aged out of the foster system.
Or are aging out.
Currently, yeah.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned earlier that they can get extended, or they can extend their foster care, benefits, for lack of term, until 21. Now, are you able to take that and use that towards helping them get on their feet?
Well, they get the checks. They get the money, and then they pay rent with it.
So you just charge them a low rent just to help get them on their feet?
Well, and more than I'd like at this time, which is why I am fundraising, which is why I'm going to be applying for grants so that I can drop their rent down low enough that they can really start to save. You also want them to pay a little bit so that they can start getting that skill and not have so much that they don't feel motivated to work.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So we're going to find that balance. But my goal is to get their rent down to around $200, and then that would go into a savings account for them.
Yeah, and then you could kind of make them save in a sense, right?
Well, they'll get the experience. They'll get the experience because at the end of their stay, whenever it is time for them to move on, they'll have this chunk of money. Be like, wow. So that's what happens when I just put money aside, every month.
I think that's very smart.
Yeah,
Good idea.
it's very difficult. It's very difficult for, it's difficult for everyone. It's difficult for me. You just want to spend that money, and they're young, and they...
Well, they probably haven't had very much experience budgeting.
Right.
Because of the various circumstances that they have been through.
Right. When you're bouncing around, you don't get a lot of time,
And you might
that stuff.
be used to that money getting stolen from you. So,
Right, yeah.
So there's this urge to just spend it while you have it, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, some of the youngsters that I have were in our program, and we did teach them budgeting. So they had a sense of it. They already had bank accounts and debit cards, and we're already kind of learning that a little bit. But yeah, that is the goal, is to help them just learn how to adult, but in the context of safety and time to heal.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're still healing throughout this process, and that healing, or that need to heal, has interrupted things like finishing school, or looking for work and things like that. All those things that everybody's kind of expected to do.
Yeah.
And it's a lot harder when you've got all those
Absolutely.
challenges.
It is. In school, most of them, it's rare for foster kids to graduate high school, even more rare for them to go to college, and not because they're, it is because of their trauma. It's because when you're moving around and you're experiencing abuse and neglect and all of the things that they experience, you don't have a lot of brain space for education, and then once they become teens, they're already behind, and then the stigma of that.
Yeah.
Is very difficult to navigate. High school is difficult anyway, but then, if you're already feeling behind and you already feel like you don't belong, it gets even more and more difficult.
Exactly.
That's why I saw the foster youth I worked with actually did better during the pandemic, because they weren't having to navigate all of that.
They could just do the school online and
Yep, and not have to navigate all the high school stuff that really is, can be really difficult for them.
Yeah. Do you find that most foster youth get GEDs rather than diplomas?
Often.
Yeah.
Often. There's a great program called Gravity that helps them. I think they may be helping get high school diplomas now too. It's been a few years since I was working with youth that was going to Gravity, but it's really fantastic, supportive space to get their GED. The expectations for showing up are just a couple days a week, just a couple hours a week, so that they have time to work and also just enjoy life a little bit, This whole thing of expecting them to work full-time jobs and take care of themselves is kind of ludicrous. It's
I don't
crazy.
think very many youth who are not even in the foster system, just regular, average youth. My son still lives at
They're
home. I
not
shouldn't
ready.
single him out like that. But most youth, they're not moving out at 18.
No.
They're in their
No.
20s, and that's how. I don't think I moved out until my mid-20s, if I was to be honest with you.
Right.
So why would we expect, these kids who have had a harder time to be able to do that? So
Right.
it sounds like Brenrose Foundation has got a great mission.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Yes.
much for what you do for the community.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, looking forward to growing and getting more homes, so that we can serve a larger population.
So it'd help for people out there watching to donate to the Brenrose Foundation.
That would be very helpful.
And you have a beautiful website, brenrose.org, and then at Brenrose Foundation is your, I think, Facebook. Do you have a Facebook? And do you have an Insta? What other social media
I think
handles?
that's just it for now.
So you've got the Facebook at Brenrose Foundation. You've got the website, brenrose.org.
Yep.
And people can go to those and they can find out how to donate to you.
Yes,
Or maybe they are a youth that needs you, maybe they can contact you, right?
Right. Yeah, and at least talk some things over. You know, I don't.
You might have some resources for people.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Or connect them with some of my people, some of my kids. Call them my kids. They're grown now. But yes.
You have a lot of kids.
I have a lot of kids. Yeah, between 40 and 50 young people I lived with,
raised,
and cared for. Yeah. It was a lot, but in all of that, it really sparked this fire in me to want to create something that helps them in the long run, helps them long term, to really be successful. Because it's so tragic to watch them struggle through. You already know what they struggled through as a child, and then you watch them struggle through the foster care system, and then they get out and they're just fumbling, and it's just heart-wrenching, especially when you see them on the street. You know, see them on the street, see them.
And then that's gotta hurt, because it's like, all that I did for you, and it still didn't stick, right?
Right. Well, because yes, oftentimes what I saw some young people just choose to go down to the street, and a lot of that had to do with self-esteem and feelings of self-worth, and like these expectations over here in life are so big, and I don't even think I can do it. It's easier just to go and be on the street, and that's tragic too.
Yes. Yeah.
It's tragic too.
It is
because
hard.
so
it's
much
hard
happens.
to get on your feet. Yeah.
It is. It is. It is. You know, and a lot of the things that they get involved with, both the trafficking and, you know, and selling drugs or whatever, is a lot of money. You know, and I would have them come back after being trafficked across the country, you know, making a lot of money, but being very abused, and then go try to get a job at fast food and, you know, making, you know, next to nothing.
Right.
It's a hard pill to swallow, and it makes it very appealing just to go back into that lifestyle, even with all of the abuse. So it's where they need more support. They need more places where they can be treated like adults, but with support. You know, they're tired of being treated like kids. They're tired of being told what to do. Foster kids are under such a microscope. You know, because the state, you know, it's a liability for them. They have to really watch everything, and so they just feel like they're constantly, everything that they do is scrutinized. You know, and they just want to bust away from that, and I can't say I blame them. So that's why I try to create a place where they don't feel like they're pressured so much. They don't feel like I have all these super high expectations of them getting it together right now. You know, I mean, yeah, we do want to keep keep working towards some, you know, independence and independent living, but, you know, that is maybe a slower pace.
Well, great. I wish you all the luck, and I hope you get those new houses and more youth to help out and more funding, all of those things. Thanks for being here, Tammy.
Thank you, Rob.
That's all we have for you today. If you'd like to learn more about the Brenrose Foundation, you can contact them via email at info@brenrose.org or find them at brenrose.org. You can also find them on Facebook at Brenrose Foundation. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Support for Mission Nonprofit is provided by Thurston Talk.
This program is provided in the public interest by Thurston Community Media. More information at TCMedia.org.